We had a discussion last week with a brother who's in the audience right now, and it got me thinking. We were talking about the LDS church, and he was once LDS, and it's Warren. He has this show, Breaking Bread, and he was wondering out loud about, do the leaders of the LDS church know the truth of Mormonism, or are they just deceived? And it's a topic that comes up a lot with people who have been LDS, myself included. And I think part of the wonderment comes from people who have been in the Mormon church is that we're astonished that men could be so outwardly successful and family men, educated, financially well off typically in the higher echelons of the Mormon church, who would go and knowingly and willingly perpetuate a fraud. And so there's like this disconnect. Do they really know? So I also think that an explanation of the situation is so multifaceted that it becomes somewhat unbelievable for us common folk to believe that otherwise honest and apparently upright people could perpetuate a fraud, and not only perpetuate a fraud, get up and say they are apostles of Jesus Christ and bear witness to the truth before millions of people with tears. Is it a fraud? Are they deluded? Are they liars? So for those of us who have abandoned the ship, we wonder, do they know what we know? And if not, why not? And if so, what on earth motivates them to play the role they play and to do what they do? So at the center of our befuddlement, we're just going to make this X represents this. Apparently honest, successful family men who publicly endorse a lie. This is the center of our query, right? Now, let's add some spokes that lead to this, and we'll talk about them because I don't want to put it right there. Let's just talk about them. And the first spokes that leads to this befuddlement is we must remember that those in the highest leadership in almost every case, and today maybe every case, I haven't looked, were in the faith from birth. Okay? So there's a high probability that at least at some point in their life they were true believers if they aren't now. Secondly, being LDS from birth, they have to some degree or another devoted a lot of time to the church, and especially as adults in full-time missions and or in church schools and in local church positions. 3, they have these types who go to leadership position have really kind of received much of their identity as faithful believers, and they have adopted a role that they get a lot of respect for. Probably very young, they were stalwart in the way they lived. They got a lot of respect for that, and they just made that community the place where they learned that towing the line would benefit them more personally than fighting against it. So they never rock the boat. Very early on, they probably learned to always steady the boat, and for that they got more props than to be a rebel. And then by the time they have reached levels of responsibility where the cracks in the church start showing up, they have a choice to make. Carry on and live with it, or resist it and rebel. And with wives and children and possibly grandchildren, the price is far too high to resist. So they, at this point, begin to rationalize, and they begin to put on blinders. You have to. And they begin to justify the cracks in order to stay where they're at. Then 5th, one of the rationalizations I believe they employ really effectively in order to continue to go on is that they look around and they say, we have all these problems, but this is the best church on the face of the earth. We have our finances are in order. We aren't in debt. We do everything right. We are a powerful institution. We have people who have high moral standards, apparently, And so they say all this stuff, and they say, when we look out at Christianity writ large, there's nothing out there that can compare with the institution we've created. Catholicism, even though they're bigger, haven't done a great job. So we're at least manning the best religious institution out there, so we'll justify these cracks that we know of. Another justification is they delude themselves into thinking, possibly, these are all suppositions, they might say, you know, I have been put in a position where my testimony and me as a person is so strong, I can handle this stuff. But I could never let it get out to the masses. Those poor dumb folk, they could never handle the truth. And it's really a form of egoism. I am strong enough to perpetuate the white lie. They're like a noble Prometheus who says, you know, I know the truth of this thing and I will just bear the burden of knowing the truth for the good of the souls who can handle it. You know, and you kind of get that idea when you hear them speak. And then by the time they've gotten neck deep, I mean, in all of it, they're too neck deep, but to do anything but tread water. And all of their assignments in life, all of their positions, they have been vetted. From a young kid, they've passed the test. These guys weren't the ones going in and confessing to fornication to the bishop when they were 17. These were the guys who every stake and ward have who are like upright dudes. They got their identity from that. And so by the time they get so neck deep, it's too late. And in the highest echelons, the chance of apostasy is just, it's got to be really, really rare because they've been so highly vetted over the course of their professional and personal careers and lives. Add in that they have the benefit of high calling, financial rewards now, and that would be number 8. And, you know, we just might call number 8 something that looks like that. They write books. They walk in a room and people stand. And we've talked about that happening. They have the honor of men ad nauseum. I mean, they walk downtown and you can see people just be like, oh, you know, this is now getting into the lofty areas of ego. And so with all that going on, they're called an apostle of the Lord. It's probably not enough anything to overcome these factors for them to step out and say, okay, I'm going to expose. But let me add a few more things and we'll get to our topic at hand tonight. There's a chance that amidst all of this, we'll call this number 9, they believe. They may be true believers. We have to admit that's possible. And we might say, well, how? I mean, how are, you know, they're not really perpetuating a lie or endorsing a lie. They really believe. Well, how many intelligent men and women over the course of history have believed really ridiculous things? Many. So that's not unheard of for someone to believe. Then there's the chance they don't believe. In fact, number 10 is they may not even believe in God. They may be atheists. And we might say, no way, but I'm telling you, if you read the emails we've gotten over the course of the years, there are people in church position who say, I go for my family, I'm in the bishopric, I am the bishop, I'm in a stake presidency, but I don't even believe in God. Because you can belong to the institution and it can fortify you so well socially and economically and in your relationships with others, God doesn't even really matter at a certain point. So it's possible that sitting up there, we have a bunch of people who don't even believe in God at this point. That's something we have to consider. And then a final consideration is that amidst all that we've discussed, there's the possibility that the men in these upper ranks are actually evil. I mean, the New Testament talks about apostles who go about feigning apostleship, but really they truly are dark and evil. That is a possibility too. That really at their core of hearts, they may acknowledge God, but they have adopted a false system. The reason I think that we can even consider this is we can see people who have been evil in other areas that are honest and successful, not honest, but they appear honest, successful family men who are in public office or politics or CEOs or CFOs of corporations. They can also fit that mold and be full of lies and just be downright evil. And that happens sometimes when people are revealed for what they do behind the scenes. right? And so if it's possible in those echelons, it's possible within a corporate church. I absolutely believe that it's entirely possible that this could be true. The reason is they promote a false gospel. And I don't mean to be hard, I do mean to be hard on them. It's a false gospel. It's a lie. And if you look at the money that they garner and use to perpetuate this thing and how they endorse people with material wealth, it is really even more troubling. And because that's anathema to the gospel. It's anathema to what Jesus was about. The Son of Man couldn't even rest his head. So it's so in opposition to biblical faith, you do have to wonder, what is really motivating them. And, here's the final problem. We'll wrap it up. Niccolo Machiavelli, he wrote a book called The Prince. I read that decades ago. And he said, things will not change because those who do not benefit from change possess the power. And those who benefit from change are powerless. Now think about that. In light of this, I do not believe that we will see much change from the top of that hierarchy, because all this stuff is in place, and for them, there's no need to rock the boat. They've been able to make a life and a career and everything else out of being a steadier. And those who do rock the boat, like myself, we are powerless to do anything to affect what's at the top. It's going to happen when the numerical weight at the bottom outweighs, has more power numerically than the top. When that happens, it will flip over, and that triangle of them being at the top, just those few, will flip over, and the numerical weight of people who are just sick and disaffected with all of it will come crashing down and crush it. That's in my opinion. All that being said, this does not mean to suggest that Mormon people are evil if their leaders are evil. They are trapped in systems no different than someone who's trapped in a Seventh-day Adventist system if it's evil, or a Catholic system, or a Southern Baptist if it's evil. All churches, if campus is evil, there's people trapped in it. Every system can keep people trapped, but it doesn't mean the people in the institution are evil. We do not war against flesh and blood. We war against spiritual darkness in high places. And how do we do that? We do that by sharing the truth and by loving. So, it's like Mark said, sorry to quote Marx because I don't like his philosophy, but he said, it's a great message for us to share with people who are in these institutions. Arise, you have nothing to lose but your chains. You have nothing to lose but the chains that hold you bound. And that ought to be somewhat of the message we give and incorporate that into Christ, because he does nothing but provide freedom and emancipation from the tyranny that comes from religious institutions.